Good evening, everyone. I'm Bhavana. I'm from PS College of Engineering, Mandya. Currently studying 7th semester. Today, I'm going to give presentation about the topics I have learned through this 1 month internship. So, these are the contents on which I will give brief explanation. Interior design, study of drawings, project planning, quality control and assurance, methodology in construction, quantity surveying, finishers, construction site safety, and finally the conclusion. So the first topic is interior design. As we know that everyone has a dream to own a house for themselves, and there are some people who want to decorate their home with colorful. So this is possible only with the help of interior designers. So let us know about the definition of interior design. Interior design is the art and science of enhancing the interior of a building to achieve a healthier and more aesthetically pleasing environment for the people using the space. So these are the two categories for interior design: residential and commercial interior. Residential interior includes the designing the interior of a new construction home or may redesigning an existing home. Commercial interior includes the design of the commercial places like bank, office, hospital, school, industry, etc. So these are the units available in residential interior: living unit, TV unit, modular kitchen, foyer unit, crockery unit, and puja unit. Foyer unit is the place which can seen as first unit when we enter home, or it is where we welcome our guest. Crockery unit means which adorns the kitchen area or dining area. So these are the raw materials used for interior design. Plywood, it is a very popular material because the wood is lightweight and flexible. And there are different types of plywood such as softwood, hardwood, marine, lumberco, particle board, and medium density fiber. So the most common thickness of plywood is half inch, but can range from 1 by 8 inch to 3 inches. And it must not be used in exposed, damp, or wet conditions because the bonds are not durable under wet conditions. And the plywood should used where a high quality aesthetic finish is required. So second one is solid woods. So these are all different types of solid woods. Pine wood is suitable for furniture and while it is strong and shock resistant material. And beech wood used to make flooring and furniture and having very high density. And ash wood has great shock resistance and solid workability and having low density too. So it is used in kitchen interior. And oak wood is used in furniture and flooring. And maple wood used in furniture, flooring, and also in kitchen accessories, and it has good strength and durability. And walnut wood used for cabinets and furnitures. And teak wood is popular wood used for furniture, and it is a hard wood and it is strong and durable. And then about laminate. The most commonly used finishing layer for MDF, plywood, particle board, wooden furniture, wall panels, and flooring are laminates. Laminates are commonly available in sheets, panels, and boards depending on the types of application. So the approximate size of sheets available is around 8 feet by 4 feet. Wall panels and boards are available as squares or rectangles in different sizes. Next, about the hardware. First one is butt hinge. Butt hinges are used mainly for interior doors and steel mostly. It is used to mount doors, and it comprises of two leaves, as you can see in this image. One leaf is attached to a fixed component, and the other leaf is linked to a moving component. Then dryer runners. Dryer runners enable dryers to slide in and out of the dryer unit. And the normal closing hinges, they are also used for doors, and they are reliable and budget friendly. Then soft closing hinges. It is very durable and provides a smooth, silent closing motion, and it has more benefits compared to normal closing hinges, such as door closes elegantly and added safety to help protect the fingers of children, and it gives better cabinet life, and also price is slightly higher compared to normal closing hinges. Then about the runners, they usually used to decorate a narrow kitchen, dining room, bedroom, staircases, narrow hallways, and at the entrance of home. So they are designed to fit the tricky areas where standard sized rectangular rugs won't fit in. And the standard size runner rug is between 2 to 3 feet wide and 6 to 14 feet long. And the runner rugs may be of woolen, cotton, silk, jute, and nylon. And then about surface finishes. Wood surfaces also need protection from light, water, and potential damage from everyday use. So surface finishes leave a hard protective film over the top of the wood to create a buffer between the wood and anything it contacts. So generally it is applied with a brush, and the most common types of surface finishes are lacquer, shellac, polyurethane, and varnish, which can make the best wood sealants. Here polyurethane is highly durable, and it is ideal for kitchen cabinets, doors, and furniture. And the shellac surface finish provides hard finish, and it is ideal for furniture and floors. And next about the types of wardrobes. We know that wardrobe is one of the most important parts of the bedroom. So first one is freestanding wardrobe. It can be easily moved around a room or even a different room. So these wardrobes come in different sizes. And fitted sliding wardrobe, they look classy with lacquered glass shutters. They are ideal for compact rooms because they are essentially space saving. They came about 2260 mm in height and 6 mm in width. And then about walk-in wardrobe, they are the ultimate luxury when it comes to clothes storage. So for the people who are really into fashion and collect a large amount of clothing over time, these wardrobes can be perfect solution. And then about modular kitchen. So modular kitchens are available in a ready to install and pre-made format, and are very easy to assemble it, and it can be customized according to our kitchen's floor plan. It makes our house look much stylish, and it also provides well storage space. And these are the various types of modular kitchen: L-shaped kitchen, parallel kitchen, U-shaped kitchen, straight kitchen, island kitchen, and G-shaped kitchen. Island kitchen comprises of either straight L-lined kitchen or straight or L-shaped kitchen with an extra unconnected island. It is typically placed in the middle, and this extra island can be used as a preparation counter and breakfast bar, and it gives contemporary look and feel. Then next about interior lighting. So interior lighting is one of the most important aspects of any living space, and it has the ability to change the mood of a room. First type is ambient lighting. Ambient lighting provides overall illumination and is meant to create a general and uniform lighting level. And some of the fixtures that provide ambient lightings are chandeliers, pendants, recessed or track lights, wall zones and wall lights, strip lighting in false ceiling. Then next about task lighting. Since direct lighting is necessary for tasks that require more light than ordinary ceiling lights. For example, task lighting is beneficial for activities such as reading, working at a desk, cooking and other chores. So these are the fixtures which provide task lighting: desk or floor lamps, under cabinet, pendant and track lights, vanity lights. And then next type is accent lighting. It is used mainly to focus on a specific point of interest or to achieve a desired effect, and it draws attention of people entering home, and also considered decorative lighting as it adds drama and style by highlighting key objects. It is more frequently used to highlight an architectural feature, sculpture or a collection of objects. As you can see, these are the fixtures which provide accent lighting. So the next quality checks. So these are the quality checks required for interiors. First one is chipping and laminates. So chipping edges expose the absorbent inner layer of the flooring, and this allows to stain and break down the flooring. So correctly cutting laminate floor eliminates chipping and increases the longevity of flooring. So to prevent it, we can avoid chipping by laying masking tape along the cut line or by using plywood cutting blade. The next one, dent marks. Dent marks happen when something heavy or blunt strikes the wood hard. So if the dent is too deep, it may be necessary to fill the dent with wood inlay or lacquer lay, or we may need to replace the dented piece of flooring with a new board and do refinish to match the floor. The next, screw holes. It can destroy the look of the wood project. So in general, if we plan to paint the wood, we can cover them with wood filler. Wood filler means it contains sawdust or wooden fiber. So then edge banding. Edge banding should be finished properly. Edge banding refers to using the edge banding materials such as PVC, wood veneer to cover the edges of a wood panels. So but if there are any issues with the edge banding, we can always remove it and reapply new edge banding. Then sharp edges of laminate. If more thickness of laminate used, the finished piece becomes more rigid. Then it will lead to sharp corner edge, which is more likely to cause an injury. So that is why rounding the corners of laminated piece will always preferred. So next about Google SketchUp. SketchUp is a 3D modeling computer program for a wide range of drawing applications such as architecture, interior design, landscape, architecture, civil and mechanical engineering. It is very easy to use, and 3D Warehouse is an open library in which SketchUp users may upload and download 3D models to share, and 3D Warehouse can be available for anyone to use. Then this is my small assignment work did by using Google SketchUp. Then next topic is reading of drawings. So learning how to read construction plans is an essential skill for building a career. Construction drawings vary from simple to very complex. So understanding how to interpret the drawings is crucial for completing the project efficiently and accurately. So there are different types of drawing. Like a layout drawing, foundation drawing, excavation drawing, reinforcement drawing, shuttering drawing. And these construction plans are architectural drawings that explain the details of a project, and they provide a unique visual representation of what exactly needs to be built. So, when learning how to read construction plans, it is very essential to understand what is contained within typical construction plans. It mostly it includes cover page, title block, keynotes, general notes, revision block, drawing scale, and legend. Cover page usually contains a drawing of actual project, and the title block appears at the beginning of set of construction plans. And this sheet mostly contains important information about projects such as revision date, plan number, creation date, copyright information, and sheet number. Then keynotes, it will reveal any specifications, details, or information of the designer things which may help us understand the drawing. And it also include information as to when the project start time. And the general notes, these notes will provide technical information that will apply to entire drawing, and also it eliminates the use of lengthy written explanations. Then revision block, if any time there is a change to building system or component, the drawing must be redrafted. So those changes are listed in revision block, usually with a date as well. Then drawing scale. Construction plans are scaled down representation of final project at a ratio of 5GL size. It helps to put the part into a print size drawing that is easily read by the crew. Then legend. It is one of the most important components. It is used to define the symbols used in the construction plans, and this is still good for construction. It is useful to approval of project and to check whether it is good for construction or not. And then next topic is project planning. The definition of project: it is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. Projects are unique, temporary in nature, and have a definite beginning and ending date. Then what is project management? It is the application of knowledge, technique, tools, and skills to project activities to meet the project requirements within the time and cost. Then why is project management important? We know that projects are often complex and involve numerous stakeholders. So to set realistic goals, budgets, and timelines, the project manager communicates with different stakeholders to understand the strategic priorities and business objectives. So by breaking the project into a clear process of assigned tasks, milestones, and deadlines, project managers can direct their teams more efficiently and react to issues with greater extent. And project management also reduces project cost by improving efficiency and also reducing the risk. Project management helps outline deliverables and define their quality standards so that everyone knows what exactly they are aiming for. So finally, I have to say project success depends on effective communication. Improving communication maximizes success and minimizes risk. Then these are the 5 stages of planning. First one is initiating phase. In this phase, the evaluation of project goal, timeline to completion, and how much the whole task will cost, and also what resources will be required to fulfill the project should noted. Then second one is planning phase. Planning phase, if the project is approved, then the next step is to assemble a project team and to start planning how to manage the project. It includes what tasks are necessary to produce deliverables and determination of duration of task and estimate the cost involved across the project. And then executing phase. After done with the planning, it's time to start the project, and this includes follow the plan created and assign the task to team members and managing the contract secured in the project. Then fourth one is monitoring and controlling phase. Here, all aspects of project must be monitored and adjusted as needed. It includes measurement of quality of deliverables and keeping track of delays that may impact the timelines of project and taking corrective action where it is necessary. And then finally, closing phase. It is the final phase of the project life cycle. It is essential to formally close the project and secure a sign off or approval from the customer stakeholders. And this process might include measurement and certification, completion certificate, reconciliation of billing, reconciliation of materials. Then next about tendering. Tendering is a process by which bids are invited from interested contractors to carry out specific packages of construction work. There are two types of tendering: competitive tendering and negotiated tendering. First one, competitive tendering. In competitive tendering, we have open and selective tendering. It is the main tendering procedures employed by both government and private sector. It gives detail and key information about the proposed works. And then second one is negotiated tendering. We have serial and nominative tendering. Here, identification by the employees of a suitable contractor to negotiate with, and the contractor can be selected either from employer's own list or on the advice of a professional team. Then finally, planning at tendering stage gives a precise construction schedule and method statement, detailed cost estimate, final sales price, clarifications and award of contract, and final contract agreement. The next topic is quality control and quality assurance. So what is quality? Producing a product that meets customer expectations and is fit for use as per standards. Then quality control. It is the operational techniques or a system of maintaining standards by reviewing, checking, inspecting, and testing. Quality assurance. It is the planned and systematic actions and implementation necessary to provide adequate confidence among concerned that the work will satisfy quality requirements. One difference I have to say about quality control and quality assurance. For example, if once shuttering is done completely, then they will, in quality control, they will go and check after completing the shuttering process. But in quality assurance, they will not wait for final product. They check or they perform parallel with a project. Then to know the quality or properties of a materials used in construction, we should conduct a quality test on construction materials such as cement, steel, aggregate, sand, blocks or bricks, concrete. First one is test on cement. We have laboratory test and field test. In lab test, initial setting time test, final setting time test, finesse test, and consistency test. Initial setting time of cement should be within 30 minutes, and final setting time of cement should be 600 minutes or 10 hours. Then finesse of cement is measured by sieving cement on standard size. Then consistency test, it is used to find the percentage of water requirement to produce a cement paste. It should be 25 to 35% of water. Then field test, first we have to check for lumps, then date of manufactured. Generally cement should be used with 90 days from its production date, otherwise the strength can be decreased. Then physical test, like when a cement is rubbed in between fingers, it should provide a smooth feeling, and if we immerse our hand into a bag of cement, it should get a cool feeling. Then test on steel, lab test. Tensile test is one of the most common tests for steel. Then chemical test and elongation test. Then field test, we have bend and The bend is performed by bending the steel bar at the midpoint, resulting in bending without fracture. If there is no sign of rupture or cracks, rebar meets the requirement of bend test. Then weight per RMT test. It is used to calculate the weight of steel bars. There is a formula used to calculate weight, that is D square L by 162. For 6 mm dia of steel, the weight of steel should be 0.22 kg per meter, and for 10 mm dia 0.62 kg per meter. Like this, we can calculate weight of steel bars for different dia of bars. Then test on aggregates. We have sieve analysis, flakiness test, and water absorption test. Sieve analysis determines the distribution of aggregate particles by size within a given sample. Then flakiness, it is the shape test on coarse aggregate. We use a thickness gauge to find it. And the water absorption for aggregates shall not be more than 0.6 per unit by weight. And test on fine aggregate, sieve analysis, and silt content. The silt content for fine aggregate should not be more than 8%, otherwise it may affect the strength and durability of work. Then test on blocks and bricks. First one is compressive strength test. It should not be less than 3.5 MPa. Then water absorption test. It should not be more than 20%. Then soundness test. It is for bricks. If two bricks are chosen and struck with one another, the sound produced should be clear, bell ringing sound, and bricks should not break. Then efflorescence test. When brick should be brick should placed in a water bath for 24 hours and dry it in shade. After drying, observe the brick surface. If there is any white or gray color deposits, like as you can see in this image, then it contains soluble salts, and it is not useful for construction. Then check for inside texture. The surfaces should not be so smooth to cause a skidding of mortar. It should be of uniform texture, and it should free from cracks, holes. Then test on concrete. First one is compressive strength test. The compressive strength of concrete can vary from 17 MPa for residential concrete and 28 MPa for commercial structures. Then slump test. The slump value should not be less than 60 mm for site mix and should not be less than 100 mm for RMC. Water cement ratio test. It should be between 0.45% to 0.6% of weight of cement. Then next topic is methodology in construction. So what is method statement? It is a form of document which states the procedure of an activity at the site, including safety. It also includes site preparation, materials, and tools to be used. Risk assessment for an activity is usually included. And then excavation for foundation. We know that excavation is the process of moving earth, rock, or other materials with tools, equipment, or explosives. Excavation is used in construction to create a building, foundations, reservoirs, and roads. Marking for excavation. While doing excavation, we have to take level at 5-meter intervals and should arrange for proper machineries and labors. Excavate should done 300 mm extra on all sides for working space for all footings. If the depth of excavation is more than 1.5 meter, we should arrange for strutting or soil strengthening. If water encounters at the time of excavation, dewatering is must. And once the excavation is completed, the area to be barricaded by using hard barricading or by using safety tapes. Finally, the checklist should be prepared and get it signed by client or representative. Checklist, it is a list of procedures to finish the construction. And checklist will help us to check on not missing important things that need to be mentioned in plan. Then about PCC in foundation. First, we have to remove loose earth from foundation and remove water collected, if any, from the foundation. And we have to prepare level using PCC and sprinkle the water before laying PCC. And regularly check for labors required for that day's work. Then we have to start mixing of concrete and start placing PCC, and should finish the top surface without using extra mortar, and should cure the concrete for 7 days. And also dewatering should done if any extra water is present at the bottom of the foundation. And finally prepare the checklist and get it signed by client or representative. This is the image of PCC foundation. The next topic is quantity surveying. And quantity surveying deals with the estimation and managing the cost of a construction project. It takes into account all the material, machineries, manpower, and other resources needed. It is very important to prepare and manage the cost on a construction project. So the roles and responsibilities of quantity surveyor. The important role of quantity surveyor is to study drawing, understand the scope of work, and they should do measurement and estimations, and they should prepare and analyze costing of tender, and they should prepare and produce bill of quantities, and they should manage and control the project cost. Finally, they should prepare reports. And the estimated quantity is also required to control the cost during execution. So they help to ensure that the construction project completed within its projected budget. So next stages in quantity surveying. We have two stages, pre-quantity survey and post-quantity survey. In pre-quantity survey, we have feasibility stage, design stage, tender stage. Feasibility stage includes the identify the project scope, and the design stage includes here the architect will develop the conceptual design drawing as per the client requirement. Using this drawing, detailed estimation is to be done. Then tender stage. Tender document will be issued by the client and evaluation of tender is done. Then finalizing the tender and finally contract agreement is prepared. Then post quantity survey. First one is construction stage. This stage involves the construction work as per the approved drawing and within agreed limits of time, cost, and specified quality. The proper planning and monitoring to be done during the execution stage. And then finally completion stage or closing stage. This is considered to be the last process of project activity. It includes the commissioning the project, and here the quantity surveyor should prepare the overall report of project and submit it to client. It involves handling over the deliverables to the client, handling over documentation to owners, cancelling supplier contracts, and releasing staff and equipment, and informing stakeholders of the closure of the project. Then finishers in construction. Finishers are used in the final part of the construction or manufacturing process, forming the final surface of an element. Finishers can protect the element from water, corrosion, abrasion, and so on, and they can be decorative and they improve the appearance of buildings. We will learn about flooring, masonry, plastering, joinery, painting in briefly. The first one is flooring. Flooring is a general term for a permanent covering of a floor structure to provide a walking surface. We have different types of flooring: laminate flooring, hard wooden flooring, stone flooring, tile flooring, mosaic flooring, paver blocks flooring. Stone flooring may be of marble, granite, Italian marble flooring, and tile flooring may be of vitrified ceramic tile flooring. Then these are the images of types of flooring: laminate, wooden, stone, tile, mosaic, pave block. The next, methodology for laying wooden floors. So before installing laminate flooring on a new or existing slab, we have to check the moisture content of a slab, and to be sure that the moisture content should not be more than 4%, and fill in any low spots in the slab with floor patch compound and allow it to set, and cover the concrete floor with a sheet of 6 mil plastic to act as a vapor barrier. If necessary, lay the foam sheeting on the top of the plastic. Then place wooden flooring sheets in room for 2 to 3 days for accumulation of moisture. And while installing flooring, we have to leave 1 by 4-inch gap on all the sides of laminate floor time, so that it could be expand. Then granite flooring. We know that granite is a popular choice of construction material who want an aesthetic solution. So we have different advantages and disadvantages of granite flooring. Advantages: the granites are queen of stones for flooring. Durability is one of the most attractive aspects of granite. We can choose many colors and patterns. It is resistant to water and staining. And granite tiles are hypoallergenic, means since granite is not as porous as some other types of natural stone, it does not retain moisture where the bacteria can settle and spread, so that children play right on the top of the clean granite tiles without having to worry about allergic reactions, so they are hypoallergenic. Then disadvantages of granite flooring. Granite has a rather cumbersome installation process, which can be difficult, time consuming and very expensive. Granite can be slippery when it is highly polished. Granite needs to be periodically resealed in order to keep it properly protected. Then this is the rate analysis for 10 square meter in cement mortar 1:6. So number of tiles per 10 square meter vitrified tiles of size 600 by 600 mm, we get 27 number of tiles. If we add 5% wastage to it, we get 29 number of tiles. So to find the cost of tiles, we have to multiply the number of tiles with the basic cost of tile, that is 60 rupees. We obtain 1740 rupees, that is cost of tiles. Then to find how much volume is required to lay this 10 square meter tile area, since 1 cubic meter cover an area of 33.33 square feet for 30 mm thickness, we need 3 cubic meter of cement mortar 1:6. So we have to multiply it by basic cost of cement and sand, that is taken as 6,612 rupees. Now we obtain a cement mortar cost as 19,836 rupees. Then the cost of mason for handling 1 square feet tile area is 32 rupees per square feet. So since 10 square meter equals 10.76 square feet, we will obtain 107.6 square feet, that is taken as 108 square feet. We should multiply it by the cost of the tile per square feet. Then we will get the final cost of mason as 3,456 rupees. By adding tile cost, cement mortar cost and mason cost, totally we obtain 25,032 rupees. By adding 15% contractors profit to it, we will obtain 3,754.8 rupees. So if we add both, we will get 28,786.8 rupees. So this is the cost per 10 square meter. For 1 square meter, we have to divide it by 10. We will get 2,878 rupees. So if you want for 1 square feet, we have to divide it by 10.76, so that we will get around 267 rupees. So the next finishes in construction is masonry. The definition of masonry is the trade or work of building with bricks or stone. So these are the different types of masonry: brick masonry, solid block masonry, composite masonry, ashlar fine masonry, granite masonry, lightweight fly ash brick masonry. So these are the masonry bonds used in construction: stretcher bond, Flemish bond, header bond, and English bond. Then block work preparation. First we have to mark on the surface and establish the wall lines to allow proper layout of block. Then we have to scrub and clean with proper tool, and the blocks must be semi-dry or skin wet so that it should not result as weak masonry by applying more water. Then before commence of block works, check reference points such as damp proof course level, lintel level, bed block level, and be sure where to terminate the topmost block course. And we have to mix the quantity of mortar which will be consumed in next 2 hours, and mixing platform should be clean. And the mortar mix for laying shall be 1 part of cement to 4 parts of sand, that is 1:4 for 100 mm masonry wall, and add water to dry mix of cement and sand in required quantity. The mixing of mortar shall be in accordance with IS 2250. Then RCC mullions and transom shall be provided as per the approved drawings. RCC mullions means it is the vertical bar between panels of glass, and transom means it is the cross piece over a door, or it is the horizontal bar. Then ashlar fine stone masonry. The stone masonry in which finely dressed stones are laid in cement or lime mortar is known as ashlar masonry. In this masonry, all the joints are regular, thin, and of uniform thickness. This masonry is used for heavy structures, arches, architectural buildings, high piers, abutments of bridges, etc. And this type of masonry is costly in construction as it involves heavy cost of dressing of stones. Then the third one is plastering. Plastering is the process of covering rough walls and uneven surfaces in the construction with the material called plaster. We have different types of plastering: lime rendering plastering, plain cement plastering, stucco plastering, and gypsum plastering. In lime rendering plastering, lime is used as a binding material, and in plain cement plastering, cement is used as a binding material. It is specially suited for damp condition. Stucco plastering is a decorative type of plastering which gives an excellent finish. It can be used for interior as well as exterior surfaces. And the gypsum plastering is being used for texture finish, as making impression will be easier. In this finish, the pattern or texture surface are produced by working with various tools in the freshly applied final coat. Then these are the tools and the tackles for plastering: plumb bob, tri-square, gauging trowel, metal float, sponge pads, line thread and pins, straight edge brush, and spirit level. Then preparation of for plastering. We have to prepare the surface cleanly with wire brush. Then close all the patches and electrical or plumbing chasing works 4 to 5 days prior to plastering work with proper curing. And all the concrete surfaces should be hacked by hammer before start of works. For beam and column joint, RPTM is to be put minimum 8-inch width to avoid cracks. Then wet the wall surface area with water spray to avoid the moisture absorption of plastering mix. Then stucco plastering to be done with 1:1 cement mortar in 1:4 proportion 1 day before the start of plastering. Then applying second coat or finishing coat for required thickness till the bull marks. Then in order to get uniform thickness of plastering throughout the wall surface, first fix the dots on the wall. Here dots means it is a patch of plaster of size 15 by 15 mm, and it having the thickness of about 10 mm. and the dots are fixed on the wall first horizontally and then vertically at a distance of about 2 meters, covering the entire wall surface. Then finally curing to be done properly for all the patchworks and plastering areas to avoid cracks for 3 to 4 days. Then fourth one is joinery. Joinery is an important part of most woodworking, and it is mostly found in windows and doors. Different types of doors are wooden door, aluminum door frames, ready-made door frames, UPVC door come windows frames. UPVC means it is an plasticide polyvinyl chloride. Then fireproof door frames and steel door frames. You can see here UPVC door come window frames. It enhances the natural cross ventilation and offers ultraviolet resistance, and it don't fade due to heat and also for the pollutions. Then aluminum door frames, they are less expensive and provides a strong as well as an economical solution for any domestic and commercial appliances. Then methodology for fixing door frames. First, the check of dimension and type of door frames. Then clearance for plaster finishes, that is 10 mm should be provided all round frame areas. Then plaster edges with proper diagonals on both sides with rich mortar finish should be applied and maintained, that is by pingy finish with skilled mason. Then fixing door frame with the anchor bolt system with support at 1/3 from top and bottom and one anchor bolt in center of frame. Then doors frames to be fixed minimum 50 mm below the flooring areas to have firm grip and also avoid gaps in the floor areas. So while flushing process, external doors to be flushed to internal walls and the internal doors to be flushed to outer walls. And also the before fixing door frames, lintel level should be checked and care should be taken. Then frame panel doors. These are widely used doors in almost all types of buildings. These are very strong and will give good appearance. And the minimum width of style should be 100 mm, and the minimum width of bottom and lock rail should be 150 mm. Then fifth one is painting. Paint is a substance used as the final finish to all the surfaces and as a coating to protect or decorate the surface. These are the different types of brushes: a synthetic brush, natural, straight and angled edge brush. Then methodology for painting. First, we have to check the type of paints approved for projects. Then preparation of surface for painting should be done by checking the plastering snags at all locations without any voids. Then oil-based primer coat with suitable white color should be applied. Then first coat of biller putty should be applied to level and even the surface area for painting. Minimum 2 coats of biller putty is preferred. Then sandpaper rubbing should be done to remove the undulations. Likewise, second coat of primer and second coat of biller putty should be applied to remove the second line of undulations. Then approved colors for different rooms as per architect code should be mock up, and then finally first coat of emulsion paint should be applied. Then this is the DFT meter, dry film thickness meter. It is used to measure the paint thickness, and it can be measured using destructive thickness measurement and also by non-destructive thickness measurement. This is the sanding machine. It is used to remove the undulations. Then about texture painting, it may give a mesmerized look to a home, and it is low cost maintenance. It provides a long lasting protection for our home. The next topic is construction site safety. Health and safety is one of the most important considerations we should take before any construction project gets underway. Safety in construction are particularly important because the industry is prone to hazardous situations and can be dangerous at times. So let us know about some of the hazards and their precautions on construction site. First one is working at height. Working at height, it is a um, working at height is common in construction. Working at height is common in construction site, so that we should never use incomplete scaffolding and things may fall on sites. We should wear helmet, and before starting work at height, check for clearance from any overhead power lines and make sure there are handrails and toe boards at all edges. Even things may fall on sites, so helmet should be wear, and we have to use proper ladders. Then second one is roof safety. Always inspect a roof before you walk on it, and you must have protection to stop you from falling off the edge, and you must have proper safety harnesses and running cables when working on the top of a roof. Then 50% of fatal injuries involving roofs are falls through fragile materials, and 30% are falls from adjacent openings. Then ladder safety. Setting up the ladder on an unstable or slippery base surface is primary reason ladders fall over. So never allow more than one person on a ladder. If you have a fear of height, don't climb a ladder, otherwise it could be harmful. Then mainly do not lean out from the ladder in any direction. Always have a firm grip on the ladder and keep a good balance. And also never use the top of a step ladder. The higher you are on a step ladder, the less stable it becomes. Then working at excavation, the collapse of the sites of the excavation will be caused, and materials falling onto the people working in the excavation, people and vehicles falling into the excavation, and damage to underground services during excavation work, causing explosion, gas escape and flooding, etc. So to prevent it, all the excavations deeper than 1.25 meters must be shored, and excavations deeper than 2 meters must have a guardrail or barrier, and vehicles tipping into the excavation must be used stop blocks, as you can see in this image. Then excavation should inspected daily. Then fifth one is electrical safety. Electrical equipment can be damaged by harsh environments or working conditions such as bad weather, exposure to dust, water, chemicals, steam and UV radiation. So to prevent it, constantly check the cable so that it should not damage and worn. Locate all overhead power lines and keep self and equipment used 10 feet away from all overhead power lines, and do not touch anything that is in contact with the power lines, and beware of fencing near power lines, and also carry the ladders and other equipment horizontally, and never spray water near power lines. And this is the personal protective equipment for construction workers. It includes hard hats, high visibility vest, face mask, earplugs, safety goggles, safety boots, gloves. This equipment will protect workers against health or safety risk on the job and makes for a safer, secure work environment. Then finally, conclusion. So as a civil engineer, we should know and learn about the topics included in this field. And in this 1 month internship, I came to know about the major topics of civil engineering, such as project planning, methodology, interior design basics, quality control and assurance, quantity surveying, and mainly about finishes in construction. So internship training gives us which is of great importance in developing one's career. So this is a precious opportunity for us to get to know the problems that are likely to arise on the site. So, firstly, I am thankful to Ashok Kumar sir for conducting this training program and giving this wonderful opportunity to get trained. And I also thank my trainers, Natarajan sir, Anand Selvarajan sir, Suresh Ramaya sir, Arvind Vignesh sir, and Ganti Matinathan sir for giving very informative sections throughout the internship. And I also thank CMTI for giving opportunity to get attend webinars on different topics. Thank you. The experience